Meantime, officials from the credit rating agencies, the three of them, will be on the hot seat an hour from now. A House subcommittee will be grilling them on transparency and accountability. Representative Paul Kanjorski chairs that subcommittee on capital markets, and he's joining us now from the Hill there to talk about what we're going to be hearing an hour from now. Mr. Chairman, always good to see you. Welcome back, sir.
My pleasure.
You know, the administration has put forth some of their thoughts on how better to regulate the credit rating agencies. You have a draft out there on changes that you'd like to make to those suggestions. Big picture, what? Tougher, more accountability, more litigation possibilities? How do your ideas differ from the administration's?
Well, I think we've taken a tougher position against the rating agencies because, one, we want to get their attention, but two, to a large extent, they are one of the really identifiable parties in this group that most people feel had a significant impact on what happened to us a year ago. And they sort of failed to make the grade. And we had to ask the questions why and what can we do to change that and to bring them more into a usable entity. And I think our bill has gone toward that, and we've included liability, we've made responsibility there, we've put points of supervisory control, things like that in place that the administration didn't necessarily have.
Congressman, my understanding is the biggest conflict of interest is that credit rating agencies are paid by the companies whose debt they're rating, instead of credit agencies being paid by the investors that want to buy that debt. I don't think any proposal out there finally says investors have to pay for the research instead of the debt issuer. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that, let me give you an analogy. In law, it would be analogous to the winner of a litigation to voluntarily offer to pay the judge's salary. I don't think we'd tolerate that, and that's the nature of how big this conflict of interest is. The issue of the securities pays the rater of those securities who they intend to sell to the market.
Do you want to end that, sir?
Well, no. I recognize that it went from a user pay to now an issuer pay because it was very difficult to get the user to pay a sufficient amount of money to maintain rating agencies.
Maybe that's a good idea. Maybe then the users who really want to know the information will pay for it, and maybe it would get rid of this abdication of self-responsibility that happened as a result. A lot of people say, oh, you know what, I'm going to buy this because it's rated AAA, and they don't do their own homework. Maybe Congress should just get out of the business completely of dealing with these ratings agencies at all.
Well, Congress isn't in the business. This is a completely private, non-regulated entity. But if
it is regulated by the SEC. In order to be an NSRO, you got to go through this process. It's an oligopoly.
They have to register. And through the Act of 06, we changed it from just having 3 or 4 nationally statistically rated statistical agencies up to about 10 today. But 3 of the 10 monopolize 95% of the field. So, you know, we really don't have what you call a competitive field, and I believe it's such an inherent conflict of interest to have the payment flowing from the issuer. Now, I don't think we can remove that in its entirety. What we're trying to do is compromise the middle.
Mr. Chairman, I don't really understand why you couldn't remove that. What would be the roadblock to removing it and making it basically a system where if you want to get unbiased information, you have to pay for
stocks.
it, like you do with stock research, etc.
Nothing would bar us from doing that, except most informed people say it wouldn't be a sufficient amount of money to sustain the expertise necessary at agencies and the expenses, and they would go away, and then we'd be without any entity.
And then maybe the investors would have to do their homework themselves.
It's their responsibility.
Yeah, fine. That's great for institutional investors to have the wherewithal to do that. I just met with a couple of them today. But there are private individuals, there are a lot of small companies that don't have the capacity or the ability to do rating, and it's sometimes better to have a professional entity that's out there providing rating than absolutely nothing.
So they hire a financial planner that does that.
Look, we know that a lot of financial planners don't succeed in picking the right horses. How do the firemen up in Utica, New York, decide what securities to buy? Right now, under the law, they say you can only invest your money in AAA securities. And then the question is, well, who provides the rating for AAA? And that's where these rating agencies come into place.
So one way that you're trying to remedy that, I guess, sir, is with this liability issue where you would make it easier for the individual investor to sue a ratings agency. And obviously you've struck a nerve with the three heads of the agencies because they've already come out before this hearing and said they would oppose that. Right. Realistically, wouldn't you be opening a Pandora's box by making litigation that much easier for individual investors?
No, it's really making the pleading stage easier, because in most instances you never get to the level of completing the pleadings, because they've built up such a wall of protection from everything from First Amendment protection to other protections that are built in for them. What we're trying to do, look, we're trying to find another means, another way to get to a satisfactory result. This is a draft of a bill. We're encouraging, by putting this bill out there, anybody that has an answer or a suggestion to this problem, come forward and tell us about it.
Sir,
we don't have all the knowledge in the world to be able to decide what to do. All I can tell you is almost everybody I have talked to on Wall Street has said one of the greatest failings of this system on this recession was the rating agency.
Which actually, you gave me the perfect segue, Mr. Chairman, because there are those also on Wall Street who say that the rating agencies failed so miserably that they are now irrelevant, that basically their reputation is tarnished beyond repair. After what you've heard today, do you agree with that, or do you think that that's too far a statement to the left?
Well, no, I think they do provide a function. Their success rate has not been enviable. I think if we tighten things up, show a new light, and give them an opportunity, there are no guarantees anywhere. But what we're going to try and do is correct the system. Most outstanding people on Wall Street, some suggest to deinstitutionalize the rating systems. Others suggest to do it through a governmental function, a quasi-governmental function. I can tell you this. I've just returned from Europe 10 days ago, and the reason they hold us in disregard is that they felt these rating agencies were speaking for the United States government. And when they put forth AAA ratings, they thought this was rated by the United States government. We can't afford to have that happen again. Yeah. That's right. It's a surprise. But it has affected us to a great extent and cost us dearly.
Mr. Chairman, I know your hearing gets underway in less than